Well, yeah. Well, my presentation's a very, very different slant to that. Nowhere near as technical. It's a bit more down to kind of do with the people side of things. But yeah, in the kind of ethos of Hotsource, I wanted to really talk about a subject that I think is a common experience across a lot of our businesses, worlds, and just really kind of give you a few of my ideas around it, you know, my kind of sort of take on the process, and hopefully as a group stimulate a bit of conversation around ways that we could potentially improve and simplify sometimes a fairly painful process. You know, it has its joys and heartaches, but you know, I think most of you are kind of familiar with the processes, realise that it can be a bit time consuming and costly at times. So yeah, really, I'm not complaining that people have to pitch, obviously, but you know, nice to know kind of what's going on. So why do we pitch? You know, it's about selling your wares. Del Boy always comes in handy occasionally, but I think, you know, seriously, it's kind of the motives behind pitching are obviously around kind of trying to get work, wanting to grow your business, you know, kind of gaining experience, you know, but more often than not, you only really kind of enter into a pitch because you think you can win it. It might be you know, you're putting a lot of time and effort into something, so you're not going to go into it with the attitude, oh, we're never going to win this. You need to be sort of positive anyway. Well, that's my kind of thoughts. But why do the clients call a pitch? It's not necessarily always about fishing for ideas. Well, that's probably a little bit of a cynical representation, but it does happen. You know, there have been documented cases of you know, big, large drinks companies that have you know, put a whole massive tender out, and then halfway through the process, or they've got a bit few ideas in, they've pulled it, and you kind of wonder why they've done that. But really, you know, there's genuinely a business need for clients. You know, they need to get the ideas, they need to benchmark costs, they need to get better ROI. You know, there's a new team in place, or it's a startup business. So there's a whole load of reasons why a client might call the pitch. But you know, ultimately they have a massive choice. They've got to be making sure that they're making the right decision. So it's a difficult process for them too as well. But you know, kind of, is it a straightforward process? Certainly not in my experience. It's a bit of a ball of spaghetti. You never know exactly what you're going to get. You know, there are the kind of the documents that come into you, the processes that go through are often very, very different. You know, you do sometimes get invitations to tender that are very transparent and clear about how the process is going to be structured, but other times it's, you know, kind of a bit all over the shop. You know, and you can get some clients that are a little bit difficult, shall we say, change timescales halfway through, you know, kind of demand a little bit more as you go through the process, you know, try to beat you over the head for price, and, you know, play agencies off against each other, which I don't think are particularly good tactics myself. But you know, you have to, as an agency, enter into that process thinking the best, and, you know, kind of relying on their integrity to some extent. It would be great if it was a really known, measurable process where you kind of understood the shape and size of it a little bit. So I kind of, you know, think what really would be the key factors in making a smooth, successful pitch process. You know, something that's not too resource heavy on either side, really, because, you know, if you get companies that put things out to pitch to 10, 15 different agencies, which is, you know, a massive number. That's a huge overhead for them to deal with as well. So, you know, it should be a fairly kind of lean process. It needs to be well structured. You know, you both kind of need to know how long the process is going to last. You should perhaps have like really simple shortlisting processes through it, rather than dragging the whole thing out and, you know, kind of wasting time with getting people to do work that isn't, you know, actually not really the right kind of fit for them anyway. You know, actually having a really informed brief is helpful. Means of kind of clients and agencies getting to know each other before you commit to doing a whole load of work around things, I think could also make things a lot easier. That was the good old chemistry meeting. But there are companies, consultants, businesses out there that do try to offer that intermediary service where they can kind of guide you through the processes. There's some good examples out there on the web, sort of fairly well represented, like the Trinity P3, which is kind of management consultants. So they have a very rigorous process in place, but they've got a really neat idea of this kind of half-day client agency workshops. And there's some kind of YouTube talking heads of agency heads out there that are kind of saying actually it's a really good process because it gives both the client and the agency a really good view of what it's like to work with each other. The agency can't really hide behind fancy PowerPoint presentations, etc., and it gives you a real kind of sense of whether you could work with someone. The industry, I guess, it's not without people trying to endeavour to make the process a little bit easier and educating clients in terms of giving them standard templates, etc., to work to. There are a few things out there that do try to help that, but they're not massively adopted. So it is a bit of an unknown process. You're kind of getting this sort of stuff, this demand for work coming in, and it's what's next, and that. You're getting asked to pitch for work in a whole load of ways. You could have your initial creds presentation, the chemistry meeting, that sort of standard invitation to tender, and then a whole kind of range of documents like RFIs, RFQs, RFPs. That although great, that's some sort of standardisation. They're actually so different, all of them. So actually, that makes it very difficult to prepare for things. Meaning that your time and cost is going to go up. That's kind of the impact point of view. So because you've got to kind of be able to react to all these different things coming in, you can kind of prepare yourself with an armory of kind of response material that you can top and tail to suit initial responses. But the kind of cost that it starts putting on the agency is difficult. So you have to qualify your briefs, the things that come in. It really makes you kind of say, well, is it worth us going for this? We need to ask a lot of questions around this to see, what's happening. It's not a particularly clear process. And I think, if you're faced, or certainly, my experience is if we're faced with 2 or 3 different pitch opportunities that come in at any one time, something that's, very clear and transparent in terms of, we want this many agencies by this date and we're going to shortlist it down to here and we want this deliverable. It's great. You kind of know, well, it's a manageable kind of investment risk. You know where you're going with it. So you're much more likely to invest in that rather than something that's a bit ambiguous and woolly. And I think, I genuinely think that if the process was more standardised and transparent, clients would actually get more out of it at the end of the day, because people, if they know it's a fair 3-way fight or whatever, they're going to go hell for leather to try and win it and do some really stonking work. But if you think, 10 agencies, well, it's worth putting something in. But so it's interesting process. But so I really kind of think about the qualification of an inquiry, really kind of looking under the skin of it and trying to kind of balance the risk of investment that you put into it. I think you do sort of kind of protect your own interests in some ways. And I think by the kind of documentation or the information that you get through with an inquiry, you can sort of get some telltale signs in there as to whether it's worth going for. You kind of look to see whether the brief might be informed. You look for making sure that there's kind of business cases and research and clear deliverables and stuff. I think if it's not a particularly informed brief, then in some ways the client is asking the agency to put a whole load of extra research in there that they should have done themselves, which I think is it's not necessarily making it a level playing field. I mean, personally, I wouldn't want to go back on a kind of a pitch response with not really having understood what the business objectives are, because you can't formulate a good argument. So yeah, I mean, again, ask how many agencies are involved. Is it going out to 10, 20? It does happen. Dates and timescales, budgets. You need to know that you know, if the kind of the investment is worth the reward at the end of the process. If they're not willing to give you a budget or any kind of budget parameters, you know, you could end up putting £5 worth of work into a presentation, and I say, oh no, well no, you know, we only had £2 to spend, so you're never going to recoup your kind of investment into it. Again, you know, telltale signs of if there's loads of agencies pitching for it and it's all slanted towards ideas, you kind of think, is it a bit of a, you know, a bit of a fishing exercise? And again, you know, making sure that it's a brief from a decision maker as well. So they're the kind of, you know, kind of metrics that I use to kind of qualify a brief, and I think that they should always be something that are present. You know, you can obviously ask those questions, try and, you know, kind of tease the information out of the client if they haven't been forthcoming with it, but like really don't be afraid to say no. That would be my advice. You know, there's quite an extreme case study in Belgium last year. Pretty much all of the ad agencies and creative agencies just went on strike. They were sort of fed up with, you know, all the clients there putting stuff out to tender to sort of 10, 15 different companies. So they were like, well, actually, no, we'll revolt. So they had like a kind of a message that went across all of their websites that kind of led to this sort of pact of or code of conduct that clients need to adopt to. I mean, I don't actually think that anything like that would happen here in the UK, because obviously it's a bigger environment and probably more competitive. But it's kind of, you know, an interesting case study anyway. But if you're happy to go for a pitch, get your ducks in order and start going for it. But is there a formula to success? You know, there's a whole load of things that could really help you with a pitch process. You know, it's down to the individual agency's creativity and ingenuity. Obviously, the research and understanding is massively important. But making sure that you kind of get your strategy right, you've got the right people working on it. You know, you can try and build a relationship with the client by asking fairly informative or informed questions throughout that process. You know, and demonstrate some insight. You know, ultimately, you really need to do your homework to be in with a chance of winning. There are other tactics. The responding with intelligence, not ones that I necessarily subscribe to, but, you know, there are pitch combat theories out there, like, you know, kind of research the decision makers, you know, use the 6 degrees of separation to kind of, you know, speak to people and find out if they know anyone who knows them, and, you know, sort of dig out some information on them. And, you know, there's books and things that talk about developing power maps and profiling the decision makers. And yeah, so it's a bit of a dark art. I personally tend not to go down that route. I think, you know, actually just going in with solid research and good ideas is, you know, worth a lot. But, you know, researching and second guessing competitors, I think it's a bit crazy personally. You stick to what you can control. You've then got the pitch situation itself, and you want to leave the right impression in front of the dragon's den. So you know, you kind of have to ask yourself beforehand, what's going to make you stand out from the crowd? You know, in a good way, of course. You know, is it the idea, the cost, the human kind of chemistry, the flow of the pitch? There's a whole load of factors, and, you know, to be honest, I think it's probably a combination of all of those in the right measure, depending on who's there. Obviously, it does help if you turn up to the pitch on time. I recall an instance where we'd got down to the third round of a big pitch. We were basically in the final two, and we got to London, chucking it down with rain. Tubes are on strike. Right, we've got 4 miles to walk. So we got there, but we turned up looking like drowned rats. So yeah, it wasn't ideal, but we got there. I knew somebody would ask me that. No, we didn't. But yeah, it was worth it. It was a good experience. But, yeah. But, you know, anyway, so you've done your pitch. You've then got this this waiting game. You know, it would be lovely to hear those words. Well, we won't be able to sing anyone else. The job's yours. But yeah, in reality, that rarely happens. I think it's maybe happened to me once, but, you know, it doesn't really happen. You've got, you know, you put weeks of work into something, and you're kind of left dangling a little bit. So, you know, a bit of a strange image, this next one, but it kind of made me feel, oh, that's a bit funny. But yeah, it can be quite a weird sensation, actually. You put loads of work into a pitch and then you don't hear anything from them, or you're chasing them, and it's a bit disheartening. But eventually, the outcome arrives, and you know, if it's good news, it's party time, whoop with self-congratulation. But you know, obviously, if it's disappointing news, then you need to learn from your mistakes. You know, you kind of pick yourself up and get on to the next one. But one of the things that really frustrates me, and I think is so valuable to agencies, is the feedback from the client. You know, if you don't win, you need to know why. You know, you can obviously carry out your own sort of internal team post-mortems and stuff, but they're never going to kind of give you the same insight as to what the decision was from the client. So you need to ask them for, you know, the kind of brutal feedback, and hope that they've got the courtesy to tell you, because there've been so many occasions when I've, you know, well, not, I don't lose that many pitches, but you know, you want feedback. You want to know where you went wrong, and sometimes they just don't even bother picking the phone up to you. It's like, you know, they've dished out all that work, and come on, give us something back. So, you know, I think that for me is, you know, that would be nice to see some sort of agreement for clients to have to give you feedback. If you've done, you know, a significant body of work for them, they could at least kind of tell you why you didn't win it. So anyway, you know, that's kind of my rant over, to be honest. You know, I've kind of covered quite a few areas of the process, the agency side, you know, kind of highlighting my pain points within it. But, you know, let's not forget, it is a time-consuming process for the client as well. It's not all about the agency. But I think it could be a process that's so much easier for both sides, and a lot less costly, which in these times I think could be a good thing. So, can reform happen? Who knows? You know, I think, you know, there's certainly industry feeling that it could. There was a kind of survey conducted towards the end of last year, where, you know, kind of IPA got a load of clients in a room and agencies, and out of all the clients that they interviewed, 58% of them said that they felt there should be a new way of kind of managing the pitch process, which I think is, you know, it's actually really telling, considering it's quite a biased process towards the client at the moment. You know, the outcome of that, I think there's going to be a series of best practice guidelines issued in a couple of months' time, you know, which potentially has a pre-pitch agreement, you know, kind of time-setting measures, a lot of the things that I've kind of sort of covered, to be honest. But I think, you know, they do say that there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach to it. But, you know, I can't help but feeling that there must be some way of improving that process. So really, thank you for listening to my rant, and over to you, posing the questions, can reform happen? You know, I think we're all, or certainly a number of us are within, it's possibly within our power, within our own little microcosm to do something about it, maybe. I don't know, maybe that's being a bit idealistic, but, you know, what should that process include? You know, could there be some sort of regulatory body or some kind of code of conduct?